The Hyper Room.
The Hyper Room.
All right, GM to all you fan humans out there, and welcome to The Hyper Room, presented by Thunderhouse, a podcast that sits at the intersection of pop culture and Web3, where we talk with thought leaders in the space about how the world of entertainment is colliding with exciting new technologies, specifically the blockchain and the metaverse. I'm your host, Casey Hyper, and today in The Hyper Room, we have Ben Mauro, the creator of the Huxley Saga. To give you a little background on Ben, he's a multidisciplined artist, having worked at Insomniac Games and Sony Pictures Animation, and then he went all the way to Wellington, New Zealand to work at the legendary Weta Workshop, where he designed everything from costumes to armor and weapons for a little set of movies called The Lord of the Rings, I think you've heard of it, and The Hobbit. Not to mention games like Call of Duty Black Ops and Halo Infinite. He is now one of the first artists to launch a comic book series as an NFT on the blockchain, and it's called the Huxley Saga. Welcome to the Hyper Room, Ben.
Thanks for having me, Casey.
Awesome. So let's just start off. Can you explain to me in your own words, like what's the pitch for the Huxley Saga?
It's basically a post-apocalyptic science fiction universe. It's an original story that I came up with over almost a decade and been illustrating and creating until launching it in Web3. But it's basically these two post-apocalyptic scavengers find a treasure map in the form of an ancient sentient robot that leads them on a adventure of a galactic scale. Maybe it would be the easiest elevator pitch, I guess.
So I'm reading it right now, and it's I don't know how to explain it. Right, it's very original. It's got some post-apocalyptic, like you said, kind of robot armors and robots in it and stuff like that. So it feels like more like a kind of a dirty Star Wars because there's a lot of
Mhm.
cyberpunk kind of vibe to it. So you've been working on this for a decade. So you've always been planning to have this launch as a physical comic book of some kind.
Yeah, the original plan, I mean, before all this stuff happened was, okay, I'll finish this comic, I'll go to a publisher, get it released, see how the audience likes it, grind my way up the ladder in Hollywood like I used to, and you know, that was the only path. So that was kind of the plan, just going down the traditional path that we had available to us at the time.
And then somehow you decided, hey, I heard this NFT thing. Let's launch it as an NFT.
Well, it was more like I just like to my goal is always to make like a great product first. And there was actually a moment where I was like halfway through the comic and I was like, man, it's taking too long. Maybe I should just release half of it as like part one.
Yeah.
And then when the rest is done, I release part two. And all my graphic novel friends were like, no, 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 you have to finish the whole thing first. Like, and so I listened to them, and that was a really great call because had I released half, the rights would probably be tied up with the publisher,
Right.
and all this stuff happened. I wouldn't have been able to do that because I don't have any of the rights anymore. Like everything kind of happens for a reason. So once I was finished with the comic, NFTs were starting to kind of happen, and it was just like, what is this? What's going on? And once I found out what was happening and just kind of what sort of a revolutionary moment this was, it's like that feels like the most relevant and interesting way to launch a product in 2021 at the time. And it was like, let me figure out the best way to do this. I know a lot of friends who, if they spent 10 years working on their like life's work, they probably wouldn't risk it on a new thing that maybe seemed like it came out of nowhere. But I just kind of went for it and, see what happens. And I've kind of done that many times in my career. Sometimes it didn't work out, sometimes it did, but it's just like, let's see what happens.
So you work with a company called Feature, right?
Hmm.
Would you call them a publisher or a tech agency to help you?
They handle the smart contracts, blockchain, help with community and running the website. So this kind of side of things, and yeah, and helping getting the physicals and manufactured and shipped and stuff. So yeah, helping on the side that maybe I'm not the best at. Just blockchain stuff's a bit over my head and all this kind of stuff.
So allow you to continue being a creator and doing the creative work, and then having a third party kind of help you with more technical and logistic
Yeah,
stuff. Yeah.
sure.
When people come onto your website to get a copy of the comic, what they're buying is an NFT, and there's an NFT of each issue, right? And each issue
Hmm.
has you're going to do 6 issues total. There are 4 issues
Yep.
out right now as we're recording this,
Yep.
and there are 10,000 copies of each of the comics. So that's it, right? There's a 10,000 print run basically, and you're buying an NFT, and the NFT is a token that unlocks the comic on your website. Is that correct?
Yeah, and it also allows you to redeem for physicals. It allows you to participate in some of the avatar sets we have. Like humans launch tomorrow, I believe, Wednesday.
Okay.
So it allows you to burn to get tokens for avatars within the ecosystem. So it's kind of like a choose your own adventure in a way where it's like, so initially there were 10,000 of each, but because we burn and allow people to choose if they want avatars or stick with comics, there's significantly less physicals actually. So I think for issue one, there's maybe like 1,300 physicals.
Okay.
Issue two and three, I think there was 1,300 redeemed as well. So it's even more limited
Well, yeah.
thing that will be out in the world, which is pretty cool. I don't know how many people redeem and how many of these like kind
Right.
of special edition ones
Okay, so
will
yeah,
get out.
so that's an important thing to tell everybody. So you can get the NFT, you can unlock the PDF for the digital version, and then you can also redeem it for a physical copy of the actual comic. And I've seen it; looks
Mhm.
beautiful. It's a beautiful hardcover.
Yeah,
So I guess you're going to do one of each issue like this. So this is the ultimate artist edition, right? It's no floppies here.
yeah,
This is like a fancy version to send out to people. And now it's not even 10,000 copies. It's a lot less that's out
hmm
there.
yeah,
Will you reprint them as a trade paperback and sell them into normal stores at some point? Or are these only going to be available in this kind of model?
yeah. Long term, we definitely want the goal of any IP. Like you want the whole world to read it. You want the whole world to be able to get this. So this to me is like the early edition that we're making just for these collectors that love this thing and are there from the beginning, and so they get this kind of special version that maybe or probably won't be the final thing. Like maybe it's just going to be a single book, but I just love these kind of individual old school issues. I have all these original print run of like Akira is kind of in a similar way. It's just like
Yeah.
there's like 100 of these small volumes, and they just look beautiful. And
The Marvel versions, right?
yeah, yeah, just some like a really cool like special version of this story that's getting released for the first time.
Okay, so that's a great point I want to talk a little bit more about because I think a lot of people there's 2 camps in the comic world, right? There's, like, a reader camp who just, like,
Sure.
loves to read comics and doesn't care about the value, they can just throw them away, they don't care, they don't bag 'em board. Then there's the other, camp that's hardcore collectors, right? And I'm just thinking about this, NFTs really definitely, target at collectors, right? And also, I see you guys are doing a lot of, comic stuff with it, with the different kinds of covers and rarities and gold
Mhm.
editions and things like that. Would you say that your community right now, the readers of the comic, are more like because it seems like you've gamified comic collecting actually with this, right? More than we've seen in before with any of the speculator booms in comic book in normal comic book world, right? This is like something very unique. I know this is not part of the game plan, right? You're writing a story, you're thinking of the lore and things like that. But how do you think about these ideas to make the comic more gamer friendly?
You kind of have like you can't just release a product one to one like a web 2 into web 3. Like you have to alter the kind of release strategy or else I don't think it will work. Even now maybe like what we did is probably a year old now, and maybe that's not even a viable release strategy anymore just because
Yeah,
things move so fast. We're kind of getting to the end of the last two issues and kind of maybe assess what is the most interesting way to do things going forward, because I have friends who are like, oh, I want to do one too, and I'm just like, I don't know if that works now. Like
right.
it's just things just move so fast, but it's very much you need to have a unique way to release something, because you can't just say, "Oh, let me take a Marvel comic and now I'm just selling it this way." It has to
Right.
be some
Right.
extra things to make this very interesting.
Yeah. When you were developing, do you think about these things or do you have meetings of like the feature guys to figure out, okay, what's the best ideas for this? How do we kind of replicate some of the comic book industry stuff and also with the Web3 world in terms of collectibles?
Yeah, a bit of both really. It's just strategizing like what is the best way to release this and figuring out the most interesting way to launch, and each release was like, we have to like pivot and adjust, like, okay, that worked really well. This maybe didn't work so well. Let's try to refine this for the next one. And the rules are kind of being written all the time, which is scary but also exciting.
Can you talk a little bit about like what worked and what didn't work?
I think initially maybe we tried to be more again like one to one. Like we had plans for extra things, but maybe we could say that save that for later. But I think when we launched, it was like, okay, this has to be there, or else maybe it just doesn't work in the space. So it's just adapting to like what people want, while also trying to keep the focus on this is a great comic, this is a great story, it's completely new, completely original, allowing people to choose what they want instead of maybe us completely choosing everything. So
Interesting.
again, a bit flipping where it's like we tried to choose everything that people could experience, but giving them more options was a better path to take.
And is that like because you talk directly to the community through like the Discord channels and things like that and you find out what people want?
Yeah, or just everyone's very vocal. You're in Discord. It's like here's the direct. people that like your thing. It's like, and it's almost kind of democratizing it, where it's just like you kind of take all the information in, or there can be votes and stuff. Like, okay, people really want this thing. Okay,
Yeah.
let's try to figure out a way to make that work. Some things can't work, but we do our best to like get as much feedback from everyone. And
Okay, that opens up two great questions now. So one, how much input do you take from your community and your fans, right? As a creator, some of the best comics out there, I don't think they were necessarily developed by committee or even having too much, other than maybe the death of Robin, right? People could call in and see if Robin lived or died. That was like an A or B choice, right? But does your community, do they influence anything in the terms of storyline, or is it more just on the way that these NFTs come out and the way that the issues come out into the market?
more on that side, like
Okay,
because I did everything myself over many years. So when I launched, the whole thing was done.
the whole thing's done. Okay,
Yeah, so finish a product and then launch a product, which also is feels like a very rare thing in the space. Usually people
right,
launch something that doesn't exist, and
right.
then, hey, we'll figure out how to make this over 10 years. Like that's probably not a
That's most of
great
the NFT market right now.
that's probably not a great path for success.
Right.
Yeah, but other things, like I'm in the middle of writing prequels now and things
Okay.
like this, and so things like that, things that I didn't want to be influenced by, like, oh, I posted this page for, wow, people really like this one character, and then I changed the whole entire story I planned, and that's the main character. And like, I didn't want to have that for the initial thing, but
Yeah.
now I feel like I've got one piece of the puzzle out there, and it's kind of seeing like, okay, the market, this portion of the market likes this. I would like to have a story that this sort of audience can enjoy, and then another story that this sort of audience can enjoy. And I'm thinking more like this. But there have been interesting things where it's like a page. The whole comic was designed to be read as a book. So I
Yeah.
was thinking about details and things from a certain, holding it in your hand.
Yeah.
But since it was now released digitally first, people are like 4K monitors, like zoomed in on panels that shouldn't be seen that high def. But
Right.
like
Right.
they'll be like, hey, this thing doesn't look as good, or it looks kind of flat. And like in my head, I'm like, well, you're not supposed to see it that close, but it's like, that's a fair point. And I repainted that panel and detailed it up and then re-uploaded. So like the community directly saw something, and I was like, you're right. And then I just fixed it and updated, and they had like immediate like feedback loop of just like, wow, we affected the comic like immediately, which was is pretty cool.
That's incredible. I think that's extremely fascinating. I can see some creators thinking that they don't want to have that much. They're the boss, so they're going to make the thing. And then there's some people who are much more open to working with this. I'm sure you've seen the Bat Cowls project right now, which is kind of getting the token holders to choose specific things about the story. So you're not going to change who Batman is, but you're going to
Mhm.
change who his sidekick is. They'll give you choices. They give you choices of what kind of weapons and what his outfit's going to look like, things like that. So very cosmetic, I think, more than you're going to change. Like Batman's going to start carrying a gun now or whatever.
Sure, sure.
But so as a creator yourself, have so much experience like collaborating with people at Weta and things like that. Do you find this to be a lot more I don't know, liberating, a lot more creative, having this kind of community at your fingertips? Because I just went on your Discord before we got on. You're in there already talking to
Yeah,
talking to everybody, and I was
yeah,
like,
every
wow,
day.
I don't know,
Honestly,
people.
every day.
I don't think Stan Lee had his once a month soapbox bulletins, right, kind of thing that he talked to the people. It was a one way talk, but you have a two-way discussion with your community. And we can call them fans as well, right? They're your fans. They're obviously invested in the Huxley universe. How much do you think that is exciting to you that you probably wouldn't have had, well, you didn't have in the first 6 issues since you already completed it, but now going forward you have that. Do you see that being the way you're going to work, or do you think you're still going to go back and forth between two types of working on a new project?
I guess it's tough. Like, I like it in one respect, but it is very intense sometimes. Like some days, if again, launches, some people aren't very happy sometimes. And like, I don't know if you can see visuals in a podcast, but all this gray hair I've gotten is all from the last 12 months. So just because there's no off switch, right? You
Right.
can't. I like taking in all the data, the good and the bad, and
Yeah.
the bad definitely can affect you sometimes with gray hair. But no, but it's all valuable, because it's just like, sometimes people are just having a bad day, and you have to understand like, okay, maybe the root of the problem is maybe this person is just having a bad day. And other times it's just like, there's a fair point in there, and that should be addressed. And let me, but I have to like take all the data in, which is a bit like getting punched in the face all day on the
Right.
internet
Right.
sometimes. But so it's a bit double, where it's just like, it's great to have that immediate connection, but that sometimes it's very intense sometimes.
Well, that's
But then,
crazy. You're like creating in public, basically, right? You're not
yeah,
just. But I can just imagine you don't like in Weta. You know, Peter Jackson just says, "Do this. This is it." I'm sure there's a team of people working and
yeah, yeah.
developing what it looks like, right? So you're kind of more used to this than, say, a traditional comic book artist or writer.
Sure, and for this also, like, I think maybe it doesn't get pointed out, like, I did everything, like, if you open up a lot of your favorite comics, there's, like, 20 names in there
Right.
sometimes, and
Right.
this was just, like, all me, like,
Yeah.
I wrote it, I illustrated it, did all of the lettering, text, like, everything.
Yeah.
Even with the publishing, like, I'm doing the publishing documents and books and stuff, like, I don't feel like I've see many friends do that.
Yeah.
It's just a lot, it's a
Yeah.
lot, but there's kind of a again, it's a bit of a sense of pride for me to, like,
Right.
at least on this first part to do a lot of that. And I think another part though, like you were saying, like, there will probably be points where it's like, okay, Ben needs to go work on this big thing and maybe won't be as available, or like
Right.
really needs to focus on maybe the next part or something. Like, it would be awesome if James Cameron and George Lucas were in a Discord. You could talk to them every day, but at a certain point, I'm just like, go make the next Star Wars, man. I don't
Yeah.
want to,
Right.
like, don't be here talking to us. Like, go make the next Avatar. Like, I want that to be amazing. I
Yeah.
want my mind to be blown.
Yeah.
Like, if that's preventing them from making the best thing possible, I would just be
Right.
like, okay, okay, go. Like, it's okay, man. Go, go.
So that kind of leads into the next question, because this is something I think is quite fascinating: the rise of Discord and this kind of community fan base built around a project and a creator like yourself. We didn't have Discord in this kind of context before. In the old days, there were like message boards, right? You got the Warren Ellis board, you got the Brian Michael Bendis boards. A lot of fans would go there and talk about it, but it's in that kind of format where there's threads and stuff like that, the old-fashioned way. So it kind of moved to Discord. How important is Discord for you to communicate with the fan base and the community, as well as just as a promotional tool, but also as a creative collaboration tool? Like, how important is it to, if it wasn't there tomorrow, would you be like happy it wasn't there, or do you feel like it's like Instagram, where it's kind of a necessary evil? It has to be there and you have to be part of it.
I think it's really important, at least to me. I mean, again, it's like extra work and stress and everything, but like Twitter is almost like everything,
Yeah.
you know. And it's just like, I guess people say it's like the town square, and
Yeah.
you're like a little part of this town square. Then I guess Discord is like the party just for that one thing or
Right.
something.
Right.
That's where you can all go to hang out and talk about this one thing. So it's important to have those spaces where it's like, this is where you can go talk about Huxley, or this is where you can go talk about Avatar or Star Wars or Dragon Ball Z or whatever. Like, it's kind of a cool way to focus all that into one place. Yeah, I think it's really important though. Like, at least to me.
I also saw that you're doing some toys and you're doing other physical collectibles like this Lego frame. That it's a kind of a cool way to show off the NFTs. Do you see this as something that you've always planned? Is this something that you're going to move into, where the Huxley universe starts to come into more physical way into people who are not maybe necessarily invested in an NFT?
Yeah, well, I mean, physicals were always. If you see my room, I'm just obsessed with like toys and collecting and books, and so for me, like, having that real thing is important, and just finding the coolest way to do that is always just kind of like high on the list to me. Even though it's making, shipping, and doing all the logistics is a lot more work, which is why most people don't do
Yeah, yeah,
that.
exactly. It's great to ship a digital comic instead of having to worry about diamond, and all
Yeah.
the returns of damages and things like that, right? I saw a trailer for a Huxley movie, and I
Mhm.
read some news that there was a movie option as well. Can you talk a little bit about how that came to be?
Yeah. Well, a year before the comic was done, I worked with a small team and director friend Sava Zakovic to adapt my comic book into a cinematic trailer to show the comics quite stylized, colorful, and a bit lighthearted. But for a film, I wanted to really take it a bit more realistic in tone. And our friend Sava is amazing at doing trailers for like Destiny and all these big games.
Yeah,
And we spent about a year adapting my own work, with some amazing team. I think it was like 6 or 7 core team, and just made an incredible trailer showing like, here's what this could look like as a film, and people really seem to like that. And we're in the middle of the next part right now, on one of the prequel stories. That's a lot of work, but really fun as well. Yeah, and then once we launched, Arya Rod and Jerome Chen, some amazing producers who worked on Spider Man, Iron Man, all the big Marvel films, recently Uncharted, and Jerome did a bunch of Love, Death, and Robots episodes directing,
Yep.
and so I'm excited to see where that all goes, and let those guys do their thing.
It seems pretty exciting. No, you launched Huxley in October. We're all coming up to the 1 year mark, and so much stuff has happened in such a short amount of
Yeah.
time. Do you think it's because of the Web3, like the spotlight on Web3? Like you couldn't get this if you went through a traditional Image Comics release or whatever, right?
Or it just would have taken a lot longer, I think. Yeah, like that was my thinking. Like it just accelerates things in a huge way. Um, just being an early adopter to something new, and I mean that's kind of always the risk reward of just, hey, let me try this new thing. Maybe it'll work out, maybe it won't. But to me, I've just seen that kind of cycle over and over again over the years, and I haven't seen it too many times, but I have seen it, and it's just like, might as well give it a shot when these new things happen. And we're kind of at the beginnings of kind of the next internet in a way. And I don't know, I'm just always excited about being there in these big technological moments
Right,
of technological revolution moments. And it doesn't happen often, right? Like I think we all grew up when the internet happened, right? Like the
right,
first internet, and
right,
just I think most of us of our age just remember that, like, that wasn't there, and then it was there, and you're like,
right,
okay, what is this? What do we do with this? Like, how does this? I remember my dad coming home like, what, this computer thing, and we can like connect
right,
and kind of talk to other people, and everyone's like, what?
right,
Dial up modems and AOL, and like you just saw that being in our life in a very small way, or like figuring itself out, and then exponentially growing to what it is now, being a very integral part of our lives. But we've been through that cycle of just like this new technological thing going from nothing to being so critical in our life, and I could just
right.
see that happening
Well, I mean,
in a similar way here.
even with your work with Weta, right? I mean, from Lord of the Rings to The Hobbit, I mean, the pipeline, the workflow pipeline could change dramatically, right? Of how the CG art, the work is done, how many people are used to make it, the money that is invested into these kind of films, right? I just always I'm very curious about like so you can see a parallel with that, I think, right? I mean, my next question is more like on your workday, since this is like a new type of you're like a new type of creator, right? You're making comics, but you have all these things around you, so maybe you can tell us a little bit about like what does your typical week look like? Do you like devote like Wednesdays to podcasts, Thursdays to Discord, and then the rest of the week I'm just drawing kind of thing?
It's definitely way more overwhelming now. I'm very glad I did the comic, like
For
finished
yeah,
everything before I started, because
yeah,
I don't think I would have been able to
concentrate.
get it all done
Yeah,
and yeah, concentrate now. So like on my end, a lot of it is expanding things in a way where a lot more things can get done. I'm still working on things, but it's just like that's the only thing I don't like, is where I love being hands on and like making things. And but now it's like, okay, got to make sure the next trailer, the production design is on track, and then now it's like, okay, expand, make sure the longer story after that is getting started,
right,
and making sure these bigger pieces are all moving forward collectively, more of like almost like running a lot of teams to make sure all these cool things are happening, and trying to be involved where I can, and just more like moving all these things in a bigger way
so
together.
you're like the CEO of Huxley now.
Yeah, I guess it kind of turned into that, huh? Which is fine, but it's like I'm just trying to find a way of like, okay, but this one I want to be more
That's
hands-on
the toys, I'm sure,
kind
right?
of thing. It's just I guess it's more like picking your battles, and you kind of have
Right,
to learn to let things go. Like with the trailer, like the comic, I want to get out of my system that I did everything myself, so like
yeah,
kind of check that box.
yeah,
So like everything after that, I don't mind being kind of collaborative. Like with the cinematic trailer, it was like, well, I can't do everything. I have to trust these really
right,
talented people to
right.
do a great job, and let's see where this goes. And I think it turned out really awesome.
Yeah, I think it is amazing, amazing how far you've come in such a short amount of time. Do you look at other projects out there, or like if you're looking at this, you're just like in your own Discord and things like that? I'm sure your eyes are on the Amazon Lord of the Rings show whenever they release something, just to see what's going on there. But do you look at any other NFT projects, any other things that are in this specific space?
Yeah, I've been involved in a few, like Artifact. I worked with them
Okay,
for on their space trip project, so I'm kind of involved and invested in other projects as well. I really like what the Parallel team has been doing with their card game. Yeah, there's a lot of people doing some really cool stuff, and it's always nice to see who's doing what, and again, what works, what doesn't work. Maybe this worked for or this new thing will come up so fast and then it kind of burns out and you're like, okay, maybe it's good we didn't do that. It's just kind of always keeping a pulse of what's going on
Right.
because again, things just move so fast.
Right. I'm guessing that we're about the same age, so we were around during the Image Comics launch time, right, in the early '90s. Is that
I
safe to say?
probably wasn't, yeah, I probably wasn't as on the pulse of American comics,
Okay.
but I do know, I do remember Image and like McFarlane and I remember some of these bigger shifts, but not as like on the pulse as some people might be. Yeah.
The reason why I bring it up is because it feels that the Web3 NFT comic market seems a lot like the early '90s when Image started off, and there was a lot of this they call speculator boom. A lot of people were buying 5 copies of whatever Young Blood or Wildcats, or more, or maybe box loads of them, thinking they're going to go up in price and things like that, and that oversaturated the market. It blew up, so that because of that, I think it's really created a big division between comic fans and comic like collectors, as you could probably say it. Personally, I love all of it. Right, I'm a reader, but I also collect stuff, and I love CGC. A lot of people don't like those comics either. I also like Comixology. I like Shonen Jump. I like reading them on my iPad. I mean, I just
Mhm.
love the medium so much. Right, that's why I'm love talking to you about this because it's very interesting. Um, but I guess in the comic market today, I'm sure you've heard, right? The traditional comic artists, they're a little bit against the NFT industry a little bit. What are your thoughts on that? How do you talk to your friends who are maybe not in this market yet? How do you explain the upside to this? And then, how do you make them feel a bit more comfortable maybe getting involved?
Well, I mean, at the beginning, I tried to tell everyone that would listen, um, like, hey, this thing is happening. I think this is going to be a big moment. Everyone should kind of check it out. And a lot of them, I just got very negative responses.
Right.
So it's like, okay, yeah, I get it. And I just didn't say it any further. And other people are like, oh wow, I had no idea. Let me check this out. And
Yeah.
um, I like getting the word out, but I'm not gonna like pressure people who aren't aren't interested, I guess. But I guess again, I've seen it so many times in our careers where it's like maybe it was like YouTube videos,
Right.
becoming a YouTuber, but a lot of those didn't really fit my personality and a lot of artists' personality who
Right.
are much more introspective.
Right.
And you kind of have to become like a media running your own show almost, right?
Right.
And I have friends who did do that and are super successful at it, but it's just, it really suits their personality type. And
Yeah.
then later there's things like Gumroad where we could like, it was kind of a similar moment where it's like before that, I had
Exactly.
to go to a company,
Yeah.
make a tutorial with them, and that was the only way to distribute and
Right.
make this thing happen. And then Gumroad like cut out this kind of huge middleman and like, wait, I can just make it and I can sell it directly to my audience. Like that's amazing.
Yeah.
And NFTs felt like another version of that, but in a bigger way. Like, wait,
Yeah.
I don't need to go to a comic publisher. I can just like sell my comic and I cut out that middleman. Like that's
Yeah.
amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of it too, just things that have never existed before, in just for like fine art, especially just like secondary royalties, like basically forever on the blockchain. Like
Right.
imagine like the Picasso estate does not get
Right.
secondary royalties of people reselling Picasso's
Right.
paintings forever, and there's just a lot of very big things that are happening for artists that just had never existed in the history of art.
I just want to
Um,
make sure that their listeners understand that for everybody who buys any copy of Huxley as an NFT, if they were to sell it to another person, Ben still gets a percentage of that sale, right? So imagine if I bought X-Men #1 and I sold it to somebody else, Marvel would still get a piece of that if it was a digital copy, but it's not. So Marvel never sees any residuals on the secondary market, but in NFTs, Ben is actually able to you're able to get a royalty on as many times as it's sold, right? If it's sold 100
mhm.
times, you're still getting a piece of the sale every time. If it goes up or down, you're still getting a piece of that.
Yeah, and just thinking about like the history of Marvel too. I remember, I don't know like exact timeline specifics, but I remember like maybe in the 90s Marvel was like not doing
Yes.
super great
Almost went
and like
bankrupt. Yes.
yeah, almost went bankrupt and like but they had created like some of the best characters and those comics were
Right.
sold and like but imagine if they were getting some kind of revenue from like all the people selling and reselling, like a lot of those maybe things might not have happened, or it sounded like Stan had to make some deals and things that maybe weren't the best at the time or something. But yeah, I don't know, it's just an interesting thing again that just has never existed before. Again, like I'm always want to be part of something new like this that and just see where it goes.
Yeah. So it's great. So you launched in October last year. So we're approaching the 1 year mark. The fourth issue just came out not too long ago. When do we expect to see 5 and 6 come out?
I think before end of the year for sure. I want to make sure The full story is out. People can
Okay.
read the entire narrative and enjoy it fully, and then a lot of the time I just want to make sure we fulfill all the physical orders, so all those are out in the world and people have them, and because they're really cool. I don't know if people will be able to see this, but a lot of the physicals are behind me right now, and packing and shipping and stuff. And
I've seen them on
um,
eBay for quite a bit of money.
yeah, yeah, I saw that too. That's pretty cool. Um, yeah, it's been cool just to like it's a thing in the world now. Like
Right.
this thing has been
Right.
the digital comic has been out for a while, but like now that the physical started shipping, it's like wow, it's real. Like it's real now. Like
Yeah.
it's a thing in the world. I don't know. There's something to that that just kind of still
That's
gets
great.
me.
I'm happy to hear that because a lot of maybe if you're super into the digital, maybe you're not like as excited to see a print version come out. But I think all creators are going to want to see either the paper book or the plastic action figure or something like that that comes to brings their creation to life, right? When are the action figures going to come out? Because I think the characters look very cool. So is that a
Yeah,
plan for
I
that?
think yeah, we're still strategizing the coolest way to do that. I'd love to have the comics fulfilled before we get too far into something else
Okay,
because
interesting.
toys as well take a long time
Right.
just to manufacture and ship. So I want to make
Right.
sure that that's very well handled and ready to go. And but yeah, they're all. I mean, we launched and all that was ready to go too, right?
Yeah.
But it's just like, what's the best way? What's the best way to do this to not overwhelm kind of the market?
Market, yeah, exactly. And I guess finally, we're in a down market right now, but I think the enthusiasm is still pretty strong for people who believe in what's going on, and I think that's a long term strategy, right? Which is exciting to see because some people in the last couple of bubbles just gave up and disappear, but I see a lot of people still building and still enthusiasm is still great. Where do you personally see the industry going? And do you think you are going to release more comics? Do you think more publishers will get involved? What more artists are going to get involved? What do you see in the next year? I know it's hard to look that far ahead because it changed so
Yeah,
much in 6 months, but where would you maybe like to see it going as where you have been seeing so far?
yeah. I mean, I guess no one really knows, but like for me, I don't think anything has really changed. Like I'm still on the same path that I was, and just have more resources to achieve that. And I'm very efficient and frugal with things, so I'm still good to do all the things that I want to do with the project and continue to support it and grow it in the best way possible. But I guess over the next year or so, like hopefully people who really were here for the right reasons are still here and creating real value and
Great.
creating real products and projects. We'll have a better sense for like what works, what doesn't work, and what's going to stand the test of time, which is what I was doing from the start. And it'll just be interesting to see like where all the chips fall. And yeah, I don't think anyone really knows, but
Yeah.
we're all waiting to see.
So say a new artist is listening to us talk about this stuff, is getting excited about it. What do you recommend they start to do first? Should they just read about Web3? Should they buy an NFT? Like, what's the best way to get involved?
I think some of the stuff Gary Vee recommends is probably good. What does he usually say? Like do 40 hours or 50 hours of research
Right.
before doing anything. And I think that's probably really smart. I probably did about that or more.
Yeah.
Where it's like, what is this? What's going on? How does this work? I think some of the early stuff I did was minting some art on Super Rare and selling some early like one of ones of my personal art. Like,
Okay.
how does this work?
Great.
Like, how do I even mint an NFT? If I mint that, like how is that connected to an ecosystem of people that
Right.
like and enjoy this, and getting connected into those communities and industries. And
Right. That's great. Great advice. I think that's fantastic. All right, Ben, let's wrap it up. Thank you so much. You can find all the links and graphics to everything that Ben and I spoke about at thehyperroom.com. You can also find at that link a way to join our Discord and Telegram to get active in the conversations around the intersection of pop culture and Web3. Thanks for listening and see you next time.